Okay, what day is it? January 1, 2024. Holy cow!
My name is Brian Trippett. I am your front porch conservative. Step on up to my electronic front porch and let's talk.
Hi, folks. Brian Trippett here, your front porch conservative. And I hope that your holidays were joyous for you and your family, that you celebrated much, loved on each other a great deal, ate too much food, and had way too much fun. So, with the holidays now behind us, it's finally here. The year that some people are looking forward to with joyous anticipation, and some people are looking forward to with a sense of impending dread, or maybe even both. 2024. This video is going to be a little bit different than a lot of the videos I do in that this one is more or less a preview of things to come, a setting of the table, as it were, a recounting or counting, depending on how you look at it, of events that have the potential to shape what goes on domestically and what goes on internationally, just to give you an idea of things that might be affecting your life. So I thought we'd start with thehill.com because they've got a list of 5 different dates just in the month of January that have the potential to shake some things up. So we go straight to it as we do with all our videos. 5 dates in January that could reshape the presidential race. Article by Niall Stanage, we read the following. The race for the presidency will look very different 1 month from now. January sees voters in the key early states render a verdict in their party primaries. President Biden faces no serious challenge on the Democrat side, while former President Trump is an overwhelming favorite for the GOP. But almost every primary season throws up some surprises, and an extra measure of volatility is added to the mix this time around and because of legal troubles hanging over Trump's head. Here are 5 key dates as the 2024 campaign gets underway. Number 1, January 4, crunch time in Colorado. What they're referring to is whether or not an appeal will be made to the United States Supreme Court about whether or not Trump should be excluded from the Colorado ballot. Well, that has already happened. But moving forward a little bit further into this article from thehill.com, we read the following. January 10, a final clash before the caucuses. Debates matter even when Trump is not on the stage. Sharp debate performances from former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, especially in the first 3 clashes, were a huge catalyst for her rise in the polls. After trailing Florida Governor Ron DeSantis for months, Haley is now roughly equal claim to being seen as Trump's main challenger. But debates are even more important when they happen in the days before a contest, when a stellar performance or a big misstep will stay fresh in the voters' minds. The January 10 debate in Des Moines, Iowa, hosted by CNN, will have huge stakes. So that's coming up. What else is on the docket? Well, next day, closing arguments begin in Trump's civil trial up in New York. The New York civil fraud trial does not pose so grave a risk to Trump as the 4 criminal cases in which he is a defendant, but it's also far more likely to reach a conclusion soon, which will give added significance. The trial is something of a curiosity given that Judge Arthur Engoron has already issued a summary judgment holding that Trump made claims in conducting his business that were fraudulent. These deceptive practices included inflating the value of his assets to obtain more favorable terms on loans. The battle now is about what penalties will be levied. And as if that weren't interesting enough, try this. January 15th, Decision Day in Iowa. The rubber meets the road. After months of campaigning, reams of opinion polls, and endless punditry, caucus goers in Iowa finally get to have their say. Iowa can throw up big surprises, much like the late surges by former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee and former Senator Rick Santorum, and how they won the GOP caucus. And by the way, we will be covering the GOP caucus in Iowa on the 15th of January. Special live coverage here on the electronic front porch. And one last item. January 23rd, New Hampshire makes its choice. So you can already see, just in the month of January, there's going to be a whole host of things that are going to be happening that have the potential to shake up, at a minimum, the presidential race. Then on top of that, you've got Congress coming back next week. Well, so much for the vacation. Yes, they'll be back in session trying to settle up questions about how to fund the government, which have two big deadlines coming up, one in January and another one in February. Questions about whether or not we fund the border and its security, questions about if we tie that to the continued giving of financial support to Ukraine, and then what do we do with our ally in the Middle East, Israel, as they're in the middle of a conflict right now. So that's all going on. But lest you think that the presidential race in America is the only thing that everybody's going to keep an eye on in 2024, and not so much. Here's an article from CNN talking about the makeup of the Congress. 10 Senate seats most likely to flip in 2024. Some of these you might be aware of, some of them you might not. But we'll take a run through here real fast. Keep an eye on the following states as elections roll around. Number 1, West Virginia, where Joe Manchin is now retiring. That might very well be a big pickup for the Republican Party. Montana is another good one. If you live in Ohio, keep an eye on that one. That's going to be a really interesting race for any number of reasons, number one of which, Sherrod Brown, the current Democrat incumbent, is not an easy out. But let's take a look at some of the others. Then you've got Pennsylvania. Well, I'm not so sure that's going to be that interesting, but we'll see. Arizona is definitely going to be interesting for a lot of different reasons. Nevada, Wisconsin, Michigan, Texas, and Florida, all states with the potential to see their incumbents be removed. So that's just a few things domestically. Now, I add this caveat, and I will also add this where international affairs are concerned. These are some of the things that we're talking about right now. When I say we, people who like to chat about domestic politics. But keep in mind, there's any number of things that could shake up the presidential race or the elections in Congress. We don't know what they are yet, and that's part of the joy of living in the current. You never know what's going to happen. Or maybe, as that great philosopher Forrest Gump once said, life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what's inside. But lest you think that domestic politics is going to be interesting, here are some other things to keep an eye on as 2024 rolls on by. Our great ally, Great Britain, is probably going to have a parliamentary election. The reason that I can say that is the current Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, has already said that there will be an election sometime this year. I take you straight to the pages of Wikipedia. The next UK general election is expected to be held in 2024 and must be held by no later than January 28th of 2025. It will determine the composition of the House of Commons, which determines the next government of the United Kingdom. Significant constituency boundary changes will be in effect, the first such change since before the 2010 general election. Now, I bring this up, number one, as I said, because Great Britain is one of our allies in Europe, but also because there is a distinct possibility that the current ruling majority, made up of conservative Tories, is about to be trounced. What kind of effect will that have on the relationship with the United States? Who will the Labor Party name as a prime minister? And will they be able to get along with the next president of the United States? If it's Trump, well, who knows? If it's Biden, again, who knows? Relations between our two nations, while they've always been historically strong, do have the potential to be, how shall I say this, prickly and finicky, depending upon who you're talking about, either in 10 Downing Street or in the Oval Office. But let's move along. Great Britain is not the only nation that's holding elections next year. Take a look at this. This is from ndi.org. It's an elections calendar for nations around the world. And there's one election coming up in particular that has the potential to be worrisome. January 13th, Taiwan. Now, I bring this up because Taiwan right now is one of those hot spots in the world. No, there's not an active shooting war going on, but because of a lot of tension between mainland China, Taiwan, and the U.S., and the fact that you've got a lot of military hardware floating around in the Pacific, there is always the potential, depending on how these elections go and depending upon China's response, that it could dramatically affect what happens in the United States. But a few other elections of note. Take a look at this. We move further into this calendar. Pakistan has an election coming up in February, and there's been all kinds of interesting news coming out of that country, particularly about former prime ministers, etc., and so on. Go down the list. Belarus has an election coming up in February. Belarus is an ally of Russia. How does that affect what's going on in Ukraine? We'll see. Move on down the line. March 1st is Iran. That's always interesting because that's a nation that is begging to be way more democratic than what it is right now. The people of Iran are pro-Western democracy. Their theocratic leadership, not so much. Moving ahead throughout the year, here's some others to keep an eye on. March 17th, St. Patty's Day in the U.S., Election Day in Russia. Will there be a changing of the guard? Kind of doubt it. But then again, you never know with these sort of things. Always something to keep an eye on. And throughout the year, you have other nations around the world. Here's a big one. June, Mexico. Oh, that has a lot of potential to affect how things go here in the U.S., depending on who gets elected to the presidency. So we'll keep an eye on that one. And on it goes. So yes, a lot going on domestically and internationally in 2024. And January is just loaded with things coming up. And I give you my word, as much as I can, to the best of my ability, I'll do my best in one form or another to try to cover it as I possibly know how. So welcome to 2024, because it's shaping up to be one heck of a wild ride. Strap in, folks. As we used to do back in 2023, we're going to start it off in 2024. If you're not a subscriber to my channel, please do so. Please also leave a comment below. I would love to know what you think about the upcoming year. Please share this video around. Please hit the bell for notifications. I want to make sure you're always aware when live streams or videos are coming out. And finally, please give me a thumbs up. My name is Brian Trippett. I am your Front Porch Conservative, and I'll see you next time.